Hello and welcome to the second episode of VST Presents the Sports Telegram. As usual, I'm Arshavir Saryan with Kenny Hodges. We've got some big things we're going to break down. We will touch on the Jalen Hurts contract was dropped earlier in the week, and what that means for quarterbacks throughout the NFL. We will touch on the NBA playoffs and where we're standing with some of these series, and we'll also go through the NHL playoffs. There are some exciting matchups and some good times to be had.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. We're a week out from the draft. So we expect to see, some movement coming up this week on the NFL side. And like I said, with the NHL playoffs and the NBA playoffs in full swing now, we've got a lot of interesting storylines and a lot of interesting topics to touch on. So it's exciting. I can't wait to break it all down.
Yeah, definitely. And so with that, we'll jump right into this Jalen Hurts contract. My man, he's an Eagle, so it kind of rubs me being a Cowboys fan. But he cashed in on a great year. I mean, playing hurt in the Super Bowl, he gave it his all. We know that, and he was rewarded. He got 5 years, $255 million. 70% of that is guaranteed. This is ridiculous. I think that's the most guaranteed money on a contract, non-Deshaun Watson. And everybody was thinking about Deshaun Watson resetting the market. I believe, and you and I had this conversation, I said it a couple months ago, actually, that no owner is going to go 100%. They're probably going to settle in that 70 to 75% range. And here it is. Jalen Hurts got 70% guaranteed. What do you got?
Yeah. So like we talked about before, that Deshaun Watson contract is such an outlier. And I feel like it probably infuriated a lot of owners around the league because nobody wanted to have that sort of contract out there, hanging out there. But it is an albatross in a lot of ways. But I do think that what we're seeing now is probably where this next round of CBA discussions will go in terms of the league there's too much volatility and guys get hurt too often in the league for it to ever be to get to a point where everybody's contracts are fully guaranteed, because these owners don't want to be on the hook for money for guys who can get hurt in an instant. But I do think that we are approaching a happy medium where, depending on the position, and we all know how important the quarterback position is, that we're getting to a point where 60 to 70% of a deal being guaranteed is going to become the norm. The numbers might change and increase because the league is starting to make so much money, as Roger Goodell pointed out, that by 2027 the league might be making $50 billion a year or something like that, is what they were talking about. So there's room for these guys to get paid. Or I can't remember the exact number, but it is an exorbitant amount in the billions of dollars a year that the league is expecting to be producing. So there's room for these guys to make money, but it's just a matter of how much of that percentage is going to be guaranteed. And I think that this is where the market is going to reset for quarterbacks, because having 70% of your contract guaranteed, $110 million guaranteed at signing, is incredible. And it says a lot about what Jalen Hurts has done. It says a lot about the work that he put in when he came into the league as a guy who wasn't expected to be an impact player when he was drafted. And for him to get to this point says a lot about him. And it might say a lot about guys who want to get paid, like Lamar Jackson. So what do you think about that?
I think Lamar's going to have to look at the market literally, and this is where not having representation kind of hurts him. He's got his advisors that he turns to, but the fact that he represents himself is something that will kind of hurt. Because he's standing firm. He wants 100% because he's a better quarterback than Deshaun. He is. Deshaun Watson is not as good as Lamar Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care at his best in Texas, coming out of the suspension in Cleveland, Lamar Jackson's a better quarterback. I think hands down, no questions asked. So if he's getting that money, Lamar wants to get paid the same. I don't know. It's hard because I don't think any owner is going to want to budge. I can see Lamar getting 75%. If he was willing to come down from that number, but then we're talking about some of the other quarterbacks that this could affect. If Lamar actually comes down and says, okay, we agree on the total salary, I'll take 75% guaranteed. If he does that, now you're taking that 70 to 75. You've got Joe Burrow coming up for an extension. Justin Herbert's coming up for an extension. Tua's not that far away. I think his expires in 25, so he's got one season to play himself into that. In that same vein of one season, you've got Dak, who's older, right? But this is his season where he's got a chance to say, no, I can get myself a 70% guaranteed contract on his last deal. If he can take the Cowboys to the promised land. And then the 1 year out of that, you've got Trevor Lawrence, and he's been starting to entrench himself. So if he can make waves this season and next season, now he's looking at getting that 70 to 75% contract. I think if these quarterbacks kind of stay in that upper tier, that upper echelon, that's their going rate.
Yeah, for sure. And to jump back on Lamar and that lack of representation, I think it definitely has hurt because you have to have somebody with you who can maneuver in those rooms and at a bare minimum can play the leverage game against some of these other teams. There are other teams that could use a Lamar Jackson, but there's no one, it feels like, that is in a position to kind of force the Ravens' hand in terms of like, hey, Indianapolis is a real possibility, or the Jets are a real possibility, because that's also Lamar not having an agent is hurting us, is hurting my Jets, because I think that we might have already had Aaron Rodgers in our back pocket if there was a situation in which we were hearing in the back channels that the Ravens or that Lamar's agent has been talking to Joe Douglas, and that's a real safety net for the Jets if the Packers keep dragging their feet on the Aaron Rodgers thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But this definitely does reset the market in terms of how much guaranteed money some of these guys will get, because Joe Burrow is going to look at this Jalen Hurts contract and say, well, I deserve at least that because I've been to a Super Bowl. Lamar's got to be looking at this and saying, well, yeah, he got to a Super Bowl. I haven't, but I'm a league MVP and have been doing this for a more sustained period of time. Justin Herbert, no one will argue his level of talent in terms of what he could bring to the table, and not all those problems in Los Angeles have been on him. I'm blaming the coach for some of those collapses just as much as I would blame Herbert for what happened in that Jags game. And then another thing to look forward to is Patrick Mahomes is in Kansas City watching all of this, saying, you know what? They got how much? I got more than all of those guys combined. So his next round of negotiations, when it's time for his next extension, he's going to be looking for that and then some. So it's going to be interesting to see where all of this, how all of this unfolds in terms of how these guys get paid and where that market ultimately lies.
Yeah, it really is. And we've got, we're running out of time. I was about to say we've got some time, but shoot, they're going into OTAs. The draft is coming up. So we've definitely are in that window where within the next 10 weeks, it's time, but it's still 10 weeks. There's a lot of questions that have to be answered for Lamar.
And before we move on, I got one question I would ask you. If you are the Ravens and the way this situation is playing out, are you looking at one of these quarterbacks next week as a potential late into the first round, second round possibility if you don't have any clarity on what Lamar wants to do? because there's a possibility you could be left holding the bag here. So, and next week we'll get further in the weeds on the draft quarterbacks and stuff, but I do think that that's an interesting position that the Ravens find themselves in as well.
Yeah, and that's definitely the one we're gonna have to monitor. And I think, as an organization, if you don't kick the tires on a quarterback in the first or second round, we're considering where Lamar is, you're not doing your job. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But draft talk, we'll save that for next week. And with that, we'll roll right into the next topic we got. We're gonna jump into the NHL playoffs. This has been exciting. There's been some surprises, some shakeups, and all around good time, if you ask me. And we'll jump right into kind of what we got going on. The first one is, as of Thursday morning, there's only one team that's up 2-0, and that's Carolina. They won 2 one-goal games over the Islanders. They needed overtime in game 2. This is a tight series. I don't think it's a blowout 2-0 for Carolina, because now they're going to the island. They're going to Long Island. Islanders are going to have some home cooking, knowing they were close. So that might be a little bit of a mojo change for them there.
Yeah, therefore the question for the Islanders in this series is they've got to get more consistent play out of Saryan in goal. He gave up a couple of stinkers in that game too that really put them behind the 8 ball. There was one, I'm still trying to figure out how the puck got into the net from that angle. Like, you have to put that on your goalie. Your goalie has to make a stop there. And even in that the overtime goal, I felt was a little soft. So they're going to need better play from him, because we all know this time of year, you need your goalies to step up. You need your goalies to stand on their head, because it's the heightened intensity of the moment. So that's the question for them. Are they going to get a better performance out of him going back to UBS for game 3? Because they're going to need it.
And, I mean, we got a few goalies who are going to need better performances. And I mean, no one can be more pissed than in Boston. You're the world-beating Bruins, and Florida.
I got a close second, but we'll get to it. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. I mean, they were the world-beating Bruins. They set records all season and had a convincing game 1 win to turn around and get beat 6-3. I mean, hey, Florida's no joke. They had a really good team last year. A couple injuries this year, sneaking in, but when they got healthy and they started putting it together at the end, they took advantage of teams slipping like Pittsburgh and found their way into the wild card. So this team isn't one to be looked over, but I was still shocked. I was not expecting a 6-3 game.
That game too, to me, if you're a Bruins fan, you're hoping that was a bit of a wake-up call, because perhaps coming off of the regular season they had, and then the way they played in game 1, it felt a little bit like they were sleepwalking in that game, because some of those neutral zone turnovers were just horrendous. They served up at least 3 of those goals on a platter. It was very un-Bruin like the way they played this year. So perhaps maybe that and I saw the look on the faces of some of those players on the bench as the clock was ticking down to 0, and you could tell they were looking at each other like, "Whoa, what is this?" Because this is a team that lost 12 times all season. So perhaps maybe that was okay, we're not going to be able to sleepwalk through this thing. Just because we've been dominant all year, it doesn't mean that you don't have to take it up another notch when you get in the playoffs. So perhaps that's what they needed, and maybe they go on to win this in a gentleman's sweep. But the Panthers definitely let the Bruins know they didn't come here to lay down, and they're going to have to play well to win this series.
Yeah, and you can rest assured Bruce Cassidy and his staff are not going to be taking it lightly. Mm-hmm. And then right into another blowout. Dallas rebounded from their game 1 loss, which was in overtime with a 7-3 stomping of Minnesota. This is a really close matchup, number 2 versus number 3. These teams have kind of been close. They were the top 2 teams in the Central for a lot of the season. The Jets were in that conversation, but for most of it, you were looking at Minnesota and Dallas. And this is going to be a dogfight. I think the 7-3 is a bit of an outlier. And I wouldn't be surprised if it goes 6 or 7.
Yeah, that series, that game, sometimes a game just gets away from you. I don't think that's any indication of what's to come in terms of the series. Matter of fact, it could be. We could turn around and see Minnesota go home and put a few goals on them in game 3. You just never know when you have 2 teams that kind of is drawing straws as to who really has an advantage in that series. I'm looking forward to watching 6 to 7 games in this series because they've been fun. But that's one of those first round matchups when you saw it. It was like, hey, this could go either way, and it's kind of played out that way the first 2 games.
Yeah, and I'm gonna save our fandoms for the end. We got 3 teams that need to respond after losing game 1, and I mean, we talked about Toronto last week. How this team has got to shake that boogeyman and show up ready to play, and they were in it at 3-2, and then they just fell apart. I mean, look, this is Tampa Bay you're playing, right? So I'm not taking anything away from the Lightning. The Lightning did their job, but if you're Toronto, how do you allow them to do that to you?
We know this is Tampa. This is playoff Tampa. This is what you get from this squad when it turns to postseason and we are officially in that chase for the cup. This is what they do. They're coming out. They could look like a walking mass unit all season long. It's a lie. They don't believe it. They are going to transform into what we've seen them the last 3 years. And you saw it. They came out and they punched Toronto in the mouth immediately. I mean, before I could even go grab a bag of chips, it was 3-0. And then Toronto fought back. They got it back to 3-2. But my biggest issue in this series is it doesn't matter what Austin Matthews does. It doesn't matter what the talent they have with Tavares or whatever they have. If you don't get better play out of Samsonov and net, this is going to get ugly, and it's going to get ugly fast. And I get it. No one's looking at him like he's a world beater. They took a flyer on him, bringing him in this season. I get it. But your goalie cannot take you out of games in the postseason. Your goalie has to keep you in them. And when your goalie is given, I mean, some of those goals he gave up, I'm like, pay me a fraction of what you're paying him, and I could give you the same amount of effort. I'm like, you just hope they need a rebound. Them going down 2-0 would be detrimental to them in a way that I don't think that some of these other teams that we're talking about responding. I think Toronto going down 2-0 might be a death nail for them in this series.
Yeah, I honestly don't know how they would respond because they're in Toronto. You have home ice. What are you doing? And
right,
I mean, you go down 2-0 and you go to Tampa, goodbye.
No, forget it. You might not make it back.
You're not coming back. I don't think you're coming back because this team is deep, talented, veteran. They have the core that's been to all these finals.
Mm-hmm.
This Tampa team, if they go up 2-0, that's it. Write them off. It's done. I don't see Toronto coming back.
Oh yeah, the boogie, and they still got the boogeyman in net.
Yeah,
he's not quite playing at the level he was a couple of years ago, but same thing. You get in the postseason and everybody turns it on. You got they have to come out the way we saw the Oilers come out, which we're going to get into. They have to come out with a big effort because this could get really bad.
It can. And talking about needing to come out, we're going to go to the other division winner in the Avalanche taking on Seattle. Now, Seattle is a team that is sneaky good.
Mm-hmm.
They were in the running for the division up until early March. And then they kind of, had the season catch up to them.
Mm-hmm.
It happens to everybody. Season gets to you early, season gets to you late. And each team is designed differently. And again, like we said with Colorado, the season got to them early. They had that late push to win the Central, and they were even in the running to be the best team in the West if Vegas lost the game or Edmonton lost the game down the stretch. We would have been talking about Colorado having home ice through the West. But what Seattle did is what has kind of been working against the Avs all season. I saw the Kings do this to the Avs. There's a tenacity you play with, and you kind of hit them hard and hit them fast, and you hem them in, and Colorado's skill isn't able to take over. And that's what Seattle is. They're a grinding, gritty team.
Mm-hmm.
If Colorado can figure out a way to win the muck, they'll do it. Otherwise, I see Seattle winning, and it won't be much of an upset.
Yeah, this is a team that, which while it might seem redundant to say as an expansion franchise, they're ahead of schedule, right? And they got here because they understand who they are. They understand that they are not going to go out there and beat you playing a wide open, fast-paced style. They got to, like you said, they got to muck the game up. They got to make it a scrap, and then boom, catch you on a counter or catch you making a mistake in front of net, put one in the back of the net, and beat you 2-1, 3-1, 4-2. Is how this team, it's their formula for success. Is that the way Colorado and McKinnon and these boys want to play? No, of course not. But this is the playoffs, and you've got to adjust. You got to adjust to your opponent, and if you got to get down in the mud, you just have to. I expect them. I expect them to bounce back. This team is the defending champs for a reason, and like you said, sometimes, and it kind of puts in perspective how great Tampa Bay has been. When you look at, you expect some of these teams who make deep runs the year before to struggle, because if you get all the way to June, you have a full 6 weeks less of off season than everyone else. And that kind of catches up. And you saw Colorado kind of get out of the gate slow. Landeskog not being there this year was an adjustment for them to have to make, losing a central piece, losing a guy who kind of organizes everything like that. But I think they'll bounce back. I think they'll be okay. But it's going to be tough. If they lose, if they go down 2-0 against a team like this, it might spell trouble for them as well.
Yeah, and again, that would be going down 2-0 and then going to Seattle.
Yeah,
where that place is going to be on fire. And another risk of going down 2-0 and then going to a madhouse. Vegas, I didn't watch the game. I flipped through the highlights. But losing 5-1 to Winnipeg is just, you won your division. You were one of the best. They held on. They didn't back into the playoffs, and they got beat. And they didn't just get beat. It was 5-1. It was a beat down.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you respond if you're Vegas? Yes. They brought the captain out from long-term IR. My first thought was, oh, look at this cap circumvention over here. Stashing Stone on IR and then bringing him back for the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got Stone being rusty and just not getting anything done. But if you're Vegas, you take it. You let Stone play through the rust.
Yeah.
You hope for a long series, and you hope to bounce back in game 2.
Yeah. And like we talked about early on, like we talked about in the postseason, Vegas learned in game 1 what Boston learned in game 2, which is just because these teams sort of scrape their way in as a wild card doesn't mean that anybody's getting into the postseason and taking anything for granted. Winnipeg came out and played like a desperate team that wants to be here, that didn't come here to get beaten 4 or 5 games. They came out with a game plan and they attacked Vegas. It says something about the makeup of a team when you have a guy get 79 stitches across his forehead and then come back and play in the third period. That tells you the sort of team you're playing against. These are guys that are going to come out and they're going to throw the kitchen sink at you. So Vegas has to be ready to respond. I don't know if they expected Winnipeg to come out as aggressive as they did in that first game, but now you know what you're dealing with. So it's like you said, you gotta allow certain pieces to sort of settle and kind of play their way back into shape. But Vegas has got to get it done because it could spell trouble going back to Winnipeg, having to try to piece this series out, beating a team 4 out of 5 times.
That is definitely what you don't want to do. And we'll roll into a team that needs to win in the bugaboo for you. The Rangers put up a number on the Devils and jumped out 1-0. New Jersey has home ice. This is a team that doesn't want to go down 2-0, go to the Garden. But I mean, for them, it's almost no real road game because these fans travel well. Both atmospheres are electric. But what do you think being up 1-0?
Well, here's the thing. Both atmospheres are electric, but here's where here's where that sicko fan comes out. Both these atmospheres are electric because we're taking over your building no matter where we go. Because one of the things that stood out immediately in this series was just I was like, I couldn't tell if we were in the Garden or not, because every time we scored or we hit somebody or whatever was going on, it sounded like we were in MSG. So again, another one of those situations where I was hoping we won that game, and I almost expected in some ways to kind of put a beat down on them in game 1, because this is the Devils team that's kind of playing their way back into prominence, right? This is Jack Hughes' first chance under this microscope and these bright lights against a team that played in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. So it's not surprising that the Rangers would come out with as stacked as talented as the Rangers are and put a number on you. And we know how good Shesterkin can be in goal. He's a top tier goalie in this league. So yeah, maybe if you're a Devils fan, you didn't want to see a 5-1 loss, but listen, this is the postseason. You got a piece of it now. You know what to expect. We're coming to beat you down. And as a Ranger fan, I am greedy. I want to go up 2-0 because one, it's going to be intriguing to see how Jack Hughes would respond in his first real piece of adversity, because being down 2-0 and then going to the Garden is going to be crazy, because that building shakes from open intent, from the opening face off. So we're going to see. Like I told you, I expected to win this series. I expected to put our foot on little brother's neck in this series, because I don't care if you finish the top of us in the standings. The postseason is a different animal, and I'm excited with how we played. There's little things to nitpick on in terms of that. I feel like if we don't shore up some things defensively, you can't allow Jack Hughes to leak out behind your defense as many times as he did and expect Shesterkin to kind of save your bacon as much as he had to in that first game. But I'll take 1-0. I'm hoping for a 2-0 series lead, and it should be fun.
Yes. I mean, I want to say more, but that's just yeah. I'm excited about that one. And now the one we say for last in this, because I am unhappy. I am unhappy that we were down 2-0 and 3-1 in game 1. I am unhappy that we were down 2-0 in game 2. Game 1, I get it. You're in Edmonton. It's hot. It's just that building's rocking.
Yeah.
But I mean, it took them so long to actually find a flow to their game.
Yeah.
And it took Kempe to score twice to kind of wake them up. And the power play didn't do anything until the end of the third.
Yeah.
Like I watch that power play and I'm like, what are you doing? Edmonton is not putting as much pressure as it looks.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was nerves in game 1. And then finally they got the cross seam passes working on that power play in the third at the end. And the no shot squeaks through, sits in the crease. Kopitar ties it up. And then they used the power play in overtime. Wait, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody watching this who happens to be an Edmonton fan, that was a penalty. He tripped him. It was blatant. It was in front of the official. You can't not call a tripping penalty. I don't care if it's overtime, first period. A trip is a trip. He didn't step on the stick. He was tripped.
Yeah.
And that power play in overtime in game one, it was tic-tac-toe. It's what you expect out of this Kings power play. And they won the game. And then game two was a mirror of the first half of game one.
Yeah.
Like all of it. The power play never got anything going. Not a single damn thing. They had a 5-on-3. Couldn't do anything. They scored after the 5-on-3. They had some momentum. Right? It was a really good second effort fighting goal by Deneau. Get to the front, pound, chip it in. Dirty, greasy goal, which is what you're going to need to beat Stuart Skinner, because that's just how he's playing right now. The guy's playing out of his mind.
Yeah.
They're doing a great job of containing McDavid. Not so much Draisaitl. It's a two-headed beast. Pick your poison.
Yeah, it's pick your poison with those two.
And with Skinner, look at the second goal. When Velarde tied it up in the second period, I jumped out of my seat. That was amazing. And that's something the Kings have been missing for the last 10 games, is someone with those kind of hands in tight. The way he just stick handled through, and he found that seam in between Skinner and the post, tied it up, and then the third period, how do you only get 2 shots on goal?
Yeah.
Look, giving Edmonton props. Their defense is strong. Their goaltending is very strong. And they've taken care of what they need to take care of. They've made it hard on the Kings. The Kings have zero ice to work with.
Yeah.
Edmonton has had the matchup. Now we're coming to LA, and let's see if the Kings can use that home ice to their advantage.
Yeah, and the only thing I have to add to that is your greatest strength can also be your biggest weakness, right? That youthful exuberance, that pace, that freneticness that the Kings can bring can be an advantage for most teams. It can also sort of work against you when you're going against a skilled opponent like Edmonton, who on most nights you're gonna be playing downhill against them anyway because of just the amount of pressure that they can put on you. It's simply for the Kings is you got to start better. Like you cannot get behind the 8 ball and be playing from a goal or 2 goals down. It's a tough way to go. It wears on your legs in the third period, like we saw in this second game, having to constantly fight back into a contest. So I think coming back to LA, you did what you needed to do. You got the split up there, which is the hope in any scenario when you don't have home ice advantage. Now you coming home, you got to take advantage of it, and we'll see what they can do.
And that rolls us right into the NBA playoffs. I'm just gonna say one name, and I'm gonna have you give your thoughts real quick before I give mine. There's a few things we got to touch on here, a lot of meat on this bone. But yeah, Russell Westbrook.
Oh, maybe the most perplexing guy in this and intriguing guy in this entire bracket, in this postseason bracket, right? Because of the things that we know who Russell Westbrook is. We know what he can bring to a team. Yes, is his jump shot suspect sometimes? Of course it is. It comes and it goes. But you never question his effort. His fit on this Clippers team has been amazing in terms of what he has brought to them in terms of skill and toughness. And he's sort of making life miserable for Phoenix in this series in terms of his ability to just, if for nothing else, his ability to grab offensive rebounds and get them second shot opportunities, which you don't ever really need Kawhi to get second chances to beat you, because if he does, he normally can. And he is definitely become as emerged as the X factor in the series, especially if we're talking about a Clipper team that isn't going to have Paul George back, presumably, in this first round series. It's going to be intriguing to see what adjustments Phoenix has to make on him, which is amazing to say, because I don't think we would have thought that that's where he was going to go with, be with it this season, after the start he had with the Lakers. But he has definitely emerged as a guy who is kind of stirring that entire drink for the Clippers, and he is going to be a vital piece if they're going to get by the Phoenix Suns in this first round.
And this is where I eat some crow on Westbrook. He's showing a tenacity I didn't know he had left in him.
Yeah.
Everything he's done with the Lakers the last 2 years, I was just like, what is up with this guy? He's coasting. He's got his $40 million a year. He doesn't want to play anymore. He doesn't want to. He's going to try to let LeBron do everything and just kind of jack threes that he can't make. And then he gets pissed when they trade him, and I know he was pissed.
Yeah.
And here he is. He's doing all these things for the Clippers, hustling, playing D, which he didn't do in 2 years, and actually looking like the Westbrook of old.
Yeah, one of the things about Russell Westbrook that we are seeing him in this Clippers rendition is what I had hoped he may have been able to become as a Laker, and it just never really metastasized in that way for him there, which is hard when you're playing in the shadow of LeBron and AD. We've seen lesser players not being able to figure out what their roles are, having orbit around the planet that is LeBron. But what we've seen with him in Los Angeles is that, or that the Clippers has been, we don't need you to score 30 a night. What we need you to be is our tough guy. What we need you to be is our irritant. We need you to be a guy who can go get us second shots. We need you to be a guy that's going to go dive around on the floor. Kawhi is the robot. Don't worry about the scoring. He's going to do that. When PG comes back, he'll handle that. We got shooters all over the place. We got Bones Highland who comes in and does whatever the hell Bones is going to do, because you never know what the hell he's going to do on a night-to-night basis, because he's so volatile, which is why Denver ended up trading his butt. But we just need you to be that guy. We need you to be front and center, front line, be our pit bull that scares the shit out of anybody we play. And you've seen him do this against Phoenix's first 2 games. This second game, it sort of materialized in him having 28 points or something like that. The first game, he killed him just getting offensive rebounds. He killed and making defensive plays. So you're seeing his fit here with the Clippers being better because he's welcome there. All the things that come with Russell Westbrook, the Clippers said, no, we need all of that shit. We need all of it. This is the difference between who we were before and who we can be now. You go be you. Don't worry about it. We don't care if you take a bunch of shots you ain't going to make. We know you're also going to be the first guy to shoot the shot and then somehow get under the basket and get your own damn rebound. We want that Russ. And that's what he has sort of reverted to, and it has been amazing to watch. It's going to be the fact that we're actually having a conversation about Phoenix having to sort of game plan how to keep him from being a disruptor is not something I think they really thought they were going to have to deal with in this series.
This is why he wasn't a fit in the Lakers. The Lakers wanted him to be the third star.
Yeah.
They wanted him to be a carrier and not a pit bull. And Russ isn't a carrier anymore. I don't even know if he ever was a real carrier, but he was always a pit bull on these teams and just disrupting everything, managing triple doubles. He was always scoring by going to the hoop, but he had some shooters around him. And the problem when he came to LA is there was no depth.
Yeah. And when you look at the Clippers, yes, he is a glorified role player, but I dare you to find a better role player in the playoffs right now in terms of a guy who he has a set job, what he's supposed to do, and can you wreck a game by not being the star, but just being a guy that 30 minutes a night just causing hell, just wreaking havoc on the floor.
Yeah, I don't know if there is a better one right now. And I'm gonna roll into 4 series that are really kind of just asking questions with where the standings are. Um, the first one I'm gonna go into is Boston and Atlanta. It hasn't really been that close. Boston's actually really kind of taking care of business the first 2 games. And the question I have there is really, can Atlanta avoid the sweep?
I mean, theoretically they should be with having guys like with that backcourt they have, they should be able to steal a game. The problem is, which has always been my issue with Trae Young, is that if you can put length on him and make him have to work to score, it sort of takes Atlanta out of all the things that makes them a really good team, which is their ability to get up and down the floor on you. John Collins flying in for alley-oop dunks. And Boston just kind of has a way of mucking all of that stuff up. So it's not looking good. I feel like, and if you're Boston, you handle those 2 wins at home. Now you see a window with everything else going on, right? Because Philly is very well. The way the Nets played in the first 2 games, even though they're up 2-0, they can be a fly in Philly's ointment. So you're looking at a situation where if we see Philly in the second round, they might have to play 6 games. Let's get this done quick so we can have a few days of rest on some of these teams, because that's the key to getting to the finals. If you can get a series done quickly and buy yourself some extra time to rest, I think Boston might be focused when they get to Atlanta and want to try to put this team away. Also, you don't want Trae Young to start feeling good either, because he's the kind of player that if he wins one, he'll start shooting from 40 feet in game 4. And next thing you know, boom, now you're 2-2. So I expect Boston to come out and try to strangle him. And I don't know. I'm not getting a great feeling that Atlanta can really make this a series.
Yeah, I didn't get one at all watching those 2 games. And I mean, you mentioned Philly and Brooklyn, so I'll go there with Philly up 2-0. Here's what gets me. Philly, high-scoring win, 121. They won by 20. Game 2, it was a muck it up. Mm-hmm. No one's shooting the ball. This is what Brooklyn needs to do to win, and they lost because they only put up 84.
Yeah.
It kept Philly to 96, but they only put up 84. And that there tells me that Philly can play both. They'll get down and dirty with you. If neither team is shooting the ball all that well, Philly's not going to panic.
No.
And I mean, Harden's not going to panic. Harden, Young, and a few other shooters. I'll save some names for later. These are guys that they could be, 1 for 15, and they're still going to be jacking up shots in the fourth quarter, thinking, I'm going to get hot.
Yeah.
And so that kind of muck it up, low it down style, it's going to keep the score low. But if Harden gets hot, he's going to score. And Philly has enough. I mean, with Embiid down in the middle,
yeah,
there really isn't too much you can do to stop them. Harris had 20 points, Embiid had 20. They had Maxley go off for 33.
Yeah,
and we're over here talking about Harden, who finished for 13 in game 2, right? So this team is deep enough and has enough that when Brooklyn thinks they can muck it up, someone's going to step up and get it done.
Yeah, and that's the question for Philly, right? Can they avoid the mental lapses they seem to go through in like 4 or 5 minute spells, where they just sort of allow opponents to kind of do things that really, when you have a Joel Embiid, you shouldn't have these lapses in time where teams just kind of, you let teams allow, like Charles Barkley keeps saying, stop allowing teams to play with you, because when you allow teams to stay in the game, that's when you run the risk of getting beat. And this Philly team, what it's been perplexing about them at times during the season is you've got a Maxey, who is the fastest player in the league and can go from end to end quicker than anybody else. You know what you can get out of James Harden, who has, to his credit, has made the adjustment in his game and has operated more of a point guard for them. He's not been ball dominant. He's been making sure he gets that ball to his big man. And then at times when it calls for him to kind of shoulder more of the offensive load, he does. And like I said, Joel Embiid, I expect him to win his first MVP this year, especially the way that he kind of played down the stretch and what he's done these first two games. They have it all. There's no real excuses for them not to get to the finals. So much so that if they don't get at least to the Eastern Conference Finals, I could make a realistic. I think it's realistic to think that this might be Doc's last year. There, if they don't get to at least the conference final. So yeah, I mean, the series has kind of gone the way it should have. I think Brooklyn might be able to steal one when they go back home, but the problem with Brooklyn is they're a team full of they've got some really decent players, but they don't have that difference maker. So when you're in a playoff scenario where it's a little bit back and forth, they've got the big joker in Embiid. They've got an absolute stud they go to when they need a bucket. Brooklyn, just Mikal Bridges is a really nice player. He's not a number one guy. Spencer Dinwiddie's a good player. Cam Johnson is showing that Phoenix could really use him in this damn series that going up against Russ and use his length to try to keep guards off the boards. But they don't have a guy that can really get them a bucket when they need it. And that's going to be the reason why they probably end up either swept or a gentleman's sweep.
It's not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
And the other one that's not going to be pretty, Denver and Minnesota.
Oh, boy.
As much as, Gobert is back and he's going to do his thing, Denver's too deep. Denver's too dominant. Neither game has been really close, not even close. I think Denver walks over Minnesota. We said it in the preview. This is going to be a sweep. I don't see anything else happening here.
No, and especially when you know what you got in Jokic, they're deep. They have depth. But the most important thing about this Denver Nuggets team is Jamal Murray is all the way back from that knee, and he's starting to look like the Jamal Murray from the bubble. And if he's looking like the Jamal Murray from the bubble with what we know Jokic is now, I don't know how they're going to be a tough out. And it's going to be tough for Minnesota to even try to get a game. Maybe in game 3 they come out hard and maybe they can catch Denver slipping, but I just don't see it. These first 2 games have been a tough watch, especially in the later window with us as dads. I'm ready to power down at 9:30. It is hard to stay into a game when you're down 20 and there's just no way back. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a quick exit for Minnesota.
And what could turn into a quick exit with concern. Giannis hurt his back in game 1. And this is a Miami team that we said in the preview is full of dogs, and those dogs took care of business in game 2 without Giannis.
Yeah.
So if Giannis isn't healthy enough to carry Milwaukee, can they outlast this Heat team that's just going to try to bulldoze their way through them? And when Jimmy Butler coaxes his supporting cast to play the way he plays, which is credit to the Heat for building a team around his personality, and bringing him into a situation that fit him. If these dogs are going to hunt, an injured Milwaukee is going to be prey.
Yeah. So there's there's a concern in this. There's a short term and a long term problem here. The short term problem for Milwaukee is it's going to be asking a lot of Middleton and Drew Holiday in terms of having to carry that offensive load. if Giannis is not healthy, and we know Giannis, like the man's leg almost snapped in half the year they won the championship, and he missed a couple games. So there's no doubt he's going to try to play, especially going to Miami with the series being 1-1. But the issue is, how does that affect him long term? Is it more than just a bruise? Is this thing going to linger? Because it is going to be tough. Because I think they're going to get past Miami. Because unfortunately for Miami, with Tyler Hero breaking his hand, so now you don't have Tyler Hero. I worry about Jimmy Butler's legs because you ask a lot of this man every night. He barely sits. He's playing 38 minutes a night. He's doing everything he can because that's what Jimmy does. Jimmy is this ultimate dog. He's going to give you everything he's got. But it can wear on a player when you have to try to carry the entire brunt of things, which I think that challenges their depth. I think Milwaukee can get past it. What I'm worried about with Milwaukee is in the second round, where you may have to see Donovan Mitchell, or you may have to see Jalen Brunson and this Knicks team that just they want to make every game just a fight. How does that affect you going forward with a less than 100% Giannis? And even if you get past that, you're probably looking at Tatum and Brown, or you're looking at Embiid in a conference final. So it only gets tougher. It gets tougher the further you go, and you'd like for Giannis to be 100% having to go through these wars, because this could be a long couple of months if they intend to try to get back to the finals.
And I mean, it's not looking too, clear cut for me. I've got a lot more questions if Giannis isn't 100% after this. And I've got questions galore about this damn Lakers team. You get a situation where John Morant is not playing, and you come out flat. You come out unable to set any kind of tone, and you allow Memphis to have their role players outplay everyone. And then Anthony Davis doesn't do a damn thing. He just disappointed so much. I mean, how do you finish 4 for 14, 13 points, and only 3 assists? It's one thing for him to finish 4 for 14 and not score when he's moving the ball and he's taking care of other things that are supposed to be happening. But he was basically rendered ineffective except for the defensive end. And when Rui repeats a situation where he joins a Lakers legend, a Hall of Famer, in doing something that no one has done in 35 years. Game 1, it was 28 points off the bench. Game 2, it's over 45 points in consecutive games off the bench in the playoffs. These are things that haven't been done. So Rui is carrying what he's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
LeBron puts up 28 points, and everyone else struggles.
Yeah, so it's one of those concerns that I had coming into the postseason. They have been in playoff mode since the All-Star break, right? Is it starting to wear on the legs a bit? Like I said, as Dylan Brooks so eloquently let us know that he didn't care because LeBron is old. Like, is the wear and tear catching up? Or was this, which we won't know until game 3, or was this the wounded animal who is – they're a talented team in their own right. They're the number 2 seed in the West with their backs against the wall, because if you're Memphis, if you have any chance of winning this series, you couldn't go down 0-2 losing both games on your home court. So it was expected that there was going to be an effort. Now, to your point, you can't be getting beat by is it Tyus Jones, Trey Jones? I know I can't get him and his brother straight. But you can't have the backup point guard and the backup to the backup center doing the things that they did. You letting Spencer Tillman Tillman beat you and just do whatever he wants at the rim. No, that's on AD. You can't allow that kind of stuff to happen. You are the rim protector. You can't allow the backup center to have the kind of night that he had. And you damn sure can't be letting Dylan Brooks shoot you at the gym. So it's going to be interesting to see what their response is. It's just that was a difficult game to watch, and it was frustrating if you're a Lakers fan, because there was an opportunity there to kind of put a stranglehold on this series without having Ja Morant there. They're not as deep as, and we're not talking about a Memphis team that's as deep as they could be, because with no Ja, Brandon Clark gone for the year, no Steven Adams, like Anthony Davis should be averaging 40 a game in this series with what's defending him. So I'm hoping they can put this behind them, and we see the Lakers team that, and like you said, and you're wasting what Rui's doing by not having your other stars sort of bolster that, because if Austin Reeves and Rui are going to give you efforts like they've done, also they need D'Angelo Russell to play a lot better, because he stunk in this game. In shooting the basketball, you need more from some of the other plate pieces. So we'll see, man. I mean, I don't know if I'm ready to say that they completely blew an opportunity, but they definitely going to have to play better than what they played in this game too.
They are, and the difference comes down to literally shooting. The Lakers finished 41.2% overall from the field. Minnesota finished 42.7%. So you look at that, you're like, oh, that's not that bad. Except the Lakers shot 26% from three.
Yeah.
And Memphis shot 30%. Xavier Tillman finished with 22 points. He went 10 of 13. This man is an interior player. Yes. There were moments where Anthony Davis was doing what he does on defense, right? But the Lakers as a whole were letting Xavier Tillman get into the paint.
Yeah. They couldn't defend. They could not stop the PNR.
They couldn't. And then, Tyus Jones.
Tyus Jones is that, yeah. It's Tyus Jones.
He had 10 big points, but he had 8 assists.
Yeah. And most of it came in that PNR action with him and Tillman, and they just couldn't defend it. I'm like, what is happening here?
Just
this ain't Harden and Embiid. What's happening right now?
Look, I want to believe that come this weekend in LA, they're going to take both games, right? I want to believe it. If this LA crowd doesn't pump them up, doesn't do what it's supposed to do, it's I don't know. It doesn't make me really excited about their prospects. I do believe they are a team that is better than the number 7 seed.
Yeah.
Right. But if they can't play better than the number 7 seed, they're going to get out. And ultimately, what are you going to do? Like, Russell went 2 for 11, 1 for 5 from deep. Austin Reeves, for the first time in feels like months, was ineffective. Yeah. He went 5 for 12 and finished with 12 points. But when D'Angelo only gives you 5,
yeah, that's when it becomes an issue.
It becomes an issue. Vanderbilt's not going to give you, too much. But
no, and that's not his job.
It's not. He went 3 for 5, had 7 rebounds.
Mm-hmm. His scoring is a bonus. Yeah. What they ask of him to do is defend.
Yeah, even Malik Beasley off the bench. He went 1 for 3 from deep. All right, but there was nothing else. Like Schroeder didn't try to shoot the ball in his time. He went 0 for 3, right? But this is a team where D'Angelo's got to figure it out. Anthony Davis cannot go 4 for 14.
Yeah.
Against a team that doesn't have interior defense.
Yeah.
He cannot. He's got to shoot that ball 20 times.
Yeah.
You got to feed it to him. So, yeah, I just believe that there's a lot more that has to happen here. This team has got to wake up. Memphis is not going to roll over.
Mm-hmm.
This is a team that was never going to roll over because they don't shut up. They haven't won anything, and they don't shut up.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what happens when you're someone who doesn't shut up? You show up ready to fight because everybody wants to shut your mouth.
Yeah.
They
have built-in edge because they have no choice.
Exactly. If I was out there popping off at the mouth every day, I would know and be ready for a fist fight every day. And that's how this team shows up to the court. They show up ready for a fight.
Yeah.
And the Lakers weren't ready to fight.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop because I don't want to go into a rabbit hole of just how frustrating it is watching this Lakers team not play to the potential they should be. Or else we'd be sitting here for another hour.
Yeah.
But on that, I'm going to roll us into the wrap up. You guys, this was fun and frustrating, but fun. Like we said, we're going to be rolling these out multiple times a week. Keep your eyes peeled. We love doing it. We're going to sit here and pontificate on our teams, on what's going on around these leagues, and try to not lose our minds.
Yeah, not lose our minds like Draymond Green did. Because, like I said, my last thing I'll leave you guys with before we sign off. Stephen A., stop. Cut it out. The man has a reputation for doing too much. We can argue whether yes, Sabonis sold it. The man should be cast on a soap opera, of course. But at the end of the day, Draymond makes it very easy for himself to be a target and have these things happen. If he could keep his foot on the ground, he might have 5 rings right now. If he could not do some of the things that he does, maybe Gary Payton II doesn't end up hurt in that series they played against Memphis last year. It's all on him. He has to be better. He has to have a better control of himself in those sort of situations. And now your team is down 2-0. And the league, Adam Silver was sitting there while he was doing his best Hulk Hogan impersonation. Like in that arena. What did you think was going to happen? Of course they were going to suspend you. Damian Lillard and all these NBA players can go and sit there and say, oh, it's BS, he got suspended. No, it would have been BS if anybody else got suspended. A guy who has built a track record of being a jackass in moments when his team needs him to not be. No, this is the byproduct of that. So that's all I got to say on that. We love you guys. Just wanted to throw that little bit in there because everybody's talking about it. But hey, keep listening to us. We're going to keep rolling these out and keep bringing you guys our opinions on everything that's going on. We appreciate the love and support. Leave a like, subscribe. Like I said, we're going to drop a couple of these a week where we're going to talk about any and everything under the sports microscope, especially in how it affects our LA teams as well. And my New York teams, because I'm going to pontificate about them too. But yeah, we love you guys. Thank you so much for listening and watching us.